Uh, Good morning, everyone. It's 9 a.m. and I'm going to start this presentation. This is the GVR Forum of Green Valley, Arizona. Every Wednesday we have a presenter. And today we have someone who's been our most popular presenter over the past several years. When we were meeting in person over at the Desert Hill Social Center, we always filled the room at 250. And then Krista closed the doors and wouldn't allow any more in because of fire code. Today, of course, we can have a whole lot more because we are on Zoom. What I would ask everyone, if you haven't already, to mute your device, whichever you're using, cell phone, tablet, computer, and so forth, so we don't get all sorts of background noises. I will do the same myself as soon as our presenter starts. And David Fitzsimmons is our resident political cartoonist out of Tucson. And he comes every year, the first Wednesday, usually the first Wednesday in February. And that's where we are. And he kindly agreed to do a Zoom presentation for us this morning. One last bit of business. The board of the Forum Club determined earlier that there would be no dues for 2021. So you can take that $2 you were planning on spending for dues and use it however you please. But right now, I'm going to turn the presentation over to David, and there you go, my friend.
Terrific. Thank you, Les, and good morning, everybody. And thank you for participating and being part of this Zoom conversation. My presentation is going to take essentially two parts, well, three parts, actually. The first part is a PowerPoint, and I'm going to talk about the near present moment in our history, which is amazing, this history that we're living through. And the second part, I'm going to touch briefly on censorship, which is an issue dear to this cartoonist. And then I'm going to take questions. The format for my PowerPoint, I'm going to be guilty of a crime that really annoys me. I'm already in that age group where I'll watch the news and I'll hear a newscaster and I will say to my wife, well, he's talking too fast. I can't understand what he's saying. But I have so many images I want to show you in my PowerPoint. I'm going to go pretty quickly through it. So I'm going to apologize in advance for being irritating in that fashion. And please know that I empathize entirely with you. But I want to kind of scurry through the PowerPoint because I love the questions I get from this group. So if you'll bear with me for a moment, I'll click on the share screen and get my PowerPoint presentation going. There we are. Is it up, Les? Hope you can see it.
Yeah, looks good to me.
All right, there I am. This is an angry piece of mail I got describing me as partisan, biased, and unfair, and it's absolutely right. Their spelling is wrong. It might have been spelled by the president's legal team, but I don't think it was. But they're correct. You will see in this slideshow, if you are a Trump supporter, you'll be very unhappy with my cartoons. And that's because, like all cartoonists, I'm partisan, biased, and unfair. Wow, what a season it's been, right? The holiday season, we spent at home alone for the most part. So I drew this cartoon commemorating that moment. There's no place like home for the holidays. And I got to tell you, I really missed my grandkids. I have one granddaughter. The last time I saw her, she was a bump in my daughter's belly, and now she's walking. So I do look forward to seeing her, hopefully in the coming summer. What a year, right? 2020, over. Please stay 6 feet away from all of us. Interesting ballot choice we had this year. For me, it was pretty simple. You're either going to vote for democracy or you're going to vote for the authoritarian. And thankfully, this guy, who desperately wanted to be and actually is the president of the Confederate States of America, did not win. And there was a transfer of power at 12:01 on January 2012. I got a nice angry mail from a Trump supporter who said the individual that belonged in that garbage truck was my late mother. Oh, the wit and humor of Trump supporters. I think I convicted Trump in my mind because of the response to COVID. During the Blitz, German Nazis killed over 40,000. Like Great Britain at that moment in our history, we were under attack. We're still under attack by an airborne enemy. We've lost at this time, when I drew this cartoon, over 100,000 civilians to the enemy. And I complained we have no Churchill, no FDR, no Yanks are coming, and our leaders surrendered our nation to the enemy. In fact, this would be the war memorial I would dedicate to the previous occupants of governance, who I believe raised the flag of surrender to a pandemic. Meanwhile, I thought our health workers were very heroic, reminding me of the 9/11 heroes who went into the smoke day after day. In spite of the fact the administration was not supporting efforts to rein in the pandemic, here's my guide to masks: the typical surgical mask, the respirator mask, and the president's mask, complete with his bleach, his UV lights, his baddie ideas, and chloroquine. For me, a key point was Sturgis, when all these bikers, thousands of bikers gathered, right, maskless. And I think clearly the consequence was super spreader event. If you can read this, my chick got COVID and fell off and died. This is my take on a rather crude t-shirt I've seen from time to time on the backs of bikers. And I think one of the issues is the bubble. My friends, I do look at Fox from time to time, and there is a bubble. Last night, while CNN and MSNBC were covering the funeral of the Capitol police officer who was killed, Fox News was covering apparent sins by Jill Biden and the riots by the BLM people. No mention of Officer Sicknick. And here's the bubble: fake news, coronavirus is a hoax, it will disappear, science is stupid. Boom. The myth of the rugged individual dying in ERs all across America. I've encountered more than one anti-masker who's taken me to task for actually wearing a mask. This was my cartoon drawn around the winter season, when news came out that the vaccines had been developed and were ready to go to market. The Star of Wonder and Hope. Christmas Eve, wise women would have brought hand sanitizer. I like that one. So did my wife, in fact. She thought that was pretty funny. Oh, peace on earth, America first, goodwill towards all. Biden and a satanic socialist. Front of you is born a savior. Donald Trump, do unto others tyranny. No pleasing some folks, just contrarian to the core. I got my start in the back of the class. Actually, I got my start in my home, drawing on the wall. The first guy I caricatured as a kid was Richard Nixon. I remember getting in great trouble for that one on the wall. I was a kid in the back of the classroom, always getting into trouble. That's where cartoonists come from, the back of the classroom. This is a drawing of Mrs. Bagwell, my 7th grade history teacher, a beloved figure in my life, a woman with whom I still have lunch. I am 66, and I still have lunch with my middle school history teacher, because this dear woman was the soul who said to me, why don't you be constructive? Think about joining the yearbook or newspaper staff. Next thing I know, I have a career of 46 years drawing political cartoons. Thank you, Mrs. Bagwell. Is it me, or is hunkering down getting to pop? Yes, this is a self-portrait. When I draw the quail, I'm often drawing myself. And that's pretty much how I felt in the course of this, and still feel from day to day. In fact, my boss made me laugh the other day when I said, what day was it, on a Zoom meeting? And she answered, Blur's Day. I thought, yeah, every day is Blur's Day. But I woke up out of the blur when I was watching C-SPAN, and suddenly members of the House are asked to clear, and I look on the other news channels and a mob is assaulting our temple of democracy. Because of lies, these insurrectionists thought that the mob rule was the way to go. And I take a very harsh perspective on all this. I say punish them to the full extent of the law. I noticed reading a story this morning that a Beverly Hills salon owner is among one of the folks who was in the Capitol. She is facing two 20-year sentences with an additional 5-year sentence. That's 45 years in prison for her behavior. I don't think any of these individuals had a clue how much they were throwing away their lives, to which I say, I'm thinking they should repurpose Guantanamo Bay. This fellow, the president of the United States, who looks beautiful in his orange makeup, once said he could shoot an individual on a street in New York City and his fans would still support him. But in this instance, he thought he could stand in the middle of Pennsylvania Avenue and shoot somebody and he wouldn't, uh-oh. The reason, of course, that he wanted desperately to hold on to the White House was because of all of these legal charges he's going to be facing. I'm going to so enjoy watching him scurry from courtroom to courtroom, struggling to evade these legal cases. Using images posted online, the FBI identified a ringleader of the Capitol Hill insurrection at his compound. There's the compound. Has he been fired by his employer yet? I draw the quail, stealing the idea from Pat Oliphant, whom I had the privilege of meeting, who often ended his cartoons with a little penguin called Punk in the corner, usually for that second joke or a more personal opinion expressed. More insurrectionists to be rounded up. I have watched right-wing media for the past 40 years, so I'm well aware of what's on it, and I'm fascinated by it. But I do believe that these four individuals contributed to the insurrection mob by spreading the lies. But lies sell, and apparently that is a crime, to the surprise of many of them. And apparently treason's a thing too. But I love Sean Hannity. The day of the inauguration of Joe Biden, Hannity focused on Hunter Biden and did talk about how beautiful the weather was in Washington on the inauguration day. Criminals wanted for separating children from their parents. Jeff Sessions, Stephen Miller, Ken Cuccinelli, Kirsten Nielsen, and Adolf Eichmann. I was just following orders. To me, these individuals are no different. These are moral equivalents to Adolf Eichmann, who committed many other crimes, but chief among them was the banality of his evil of simply being a bureaucrat, causing great suffering, as these individuals did, not to mention the chief executive who'll be facing impeachment. This cartoon, it's too wordy to read, but I saw a neighbor with a Trump flag still up, and I wondered to myself, wow, if this were Germany after the Reichstag burned, would he still have a Nazi flag up? The day after Pearl Harbor, would he have the rising sun up? Would he have the Confederate flag up after the assassination of President Lincoln? I myself, after seeing his flag, went home and posted my Old Glory, the red, white, and blue. Operation Warp Speed 2. I think this is something that we need to launch, and that's to cope with the radicalization online of these individuals who can carry the contagion of these absurd, destructive beliefs. The Republican Party is having a real problem right now, even though the Wicked Witch appears to be dead thanks to the 2020 election. They're not going to break out the confetti until his winged monkeys are grounded. What the party fears is the base, your neighbors, our neighbors, the individuals who are so furious, angry, and ill-informed. This feels familiar, calls for unity. I think I draw this cartoon every couple of years, but it's just a perfect metaphor. Thank you to the late Charles Schulz. Never trust the Lucy. Impeachment, let's move on. What happened to unity? Whatever happened to malice towards none? Well, Lincoln said that after annihilating the insurrection and burning the Confederacy to the ground. I'm arguing, count your blessings. This is Biden crossing the Delaware in the dead of winter. This is a cartoon, I think, for later in the week. I'm giving you a sneak preview. And down below, you see the variant virus bobbing up in the water. That's going to be problematic. But I wish the president luck in this venture. There's some QAnon theorists that Joe Biden is, in fact, not really the president, that Donald Trump's brain was transferred into Joe Biden. But I have proof that this individual could not possibly be Donald Trump because he's been seen working. This is Sunday's cartoon. Hopefully, we will get the virus under control and we can restore our nation. I think our economy is coiled to spring back. I do get hate mail. I love the hate mail, if anybody wonders. So if someone is loathing me and wants to ask me an angry question, I'd be delighted to take it when I'm finished. This is an example of the kind of mail I get. It's usually furious mail. Sometimes if it's threatening, I will publish it on Facebook and with full attribution to the individual who threatened me. I got a piece of mail last week from a Proud Boy here in Tucson who was unhappy with me. So I thought I'd out him. Arizona, we haven't fared very well either under Republican leadership. They just have difficulty managing governance. They're just interested in giving away the tax breaks to corporations, and that's about it. A lockdown would have been a catastrophe, said Governor Ducey, who decided to close late and open early. And Arizona has now over 10,000 dead as a result. It's fascinating to me how this doesn't seem to matter to too many people. A lot of baddie members here in Arizona. My favorite is Representative Fincham, a cop from Kokomo who loves to dress up like a cowboy, who believes that Charlottesville was a deep state fake. He also belongs to Oath Keepers, and he was present at the rally in Washington, D.C. I'm stunned he has not been expelled from the state legislature, along with other individuals, Lesko, Gosar, and Biggs, who spread the big lie, continued to pump it up in Arizona, and are allies of the state party leader, Kelly Ward, who's at odds with Governor Ducey, because Governor Ducey is not conservative or Trumpian enough to satisfy these folks. Boom. What I loved about Ducey was he was really gung-ho for opening the schools. And having many acquaintances who were teachers, I thought, well, great idea. Yeah, open the school early. This is what's going to happen with the kids. I can't breathe. I'm an astronaut. Stupid substitute won't let us visit our teacher in the hospital. Good luck with that. Oh, and of course, the other beautiful thing about it, speaking of the inability to govern, were these teachers given the healthcare protective stuff that they needed to teach safely in our schools? No, there's no funding for that. Of course not. You're on your own. Arizona's Republican Party headquarters follow the chemtrails past Area 51. Take the Flat Earth Freeway through the Bermuda Triangle to Obama's birthplace in Nigeria, where a UFO piloted by lizard people will take you to a bunker in Phoenix next to where the moon landing was faked. That's the present day state of the party in Arizona, pretty much. All the moderates have been driven out, which is unfortunate because for years, Southern Arizona has sent many brilliant, talented, smart, wise Republican centrists to serve in the legislature. They're gone. I think one of the greatest tragedies of the Trump years is the building of the wall. If you see, there are images of it in really nonsensical spots that are environmentally priceless, wonderful places, not to mention Quito Baquito Spring, which was sacred to the Native Americans. And here, in a derivative sense, I use the image of the man standing up against the tanks after Tiananmen Square, only this time it's the cranes delivering the wall segments. I'm syndicated to over 700 papers worldwide, which is great because there are about 700 papers left. 1,500 American cities no longer have newspapers. There are news deserts throughout the country. Here are a number of newspapers who are financially troubled and teetering on the edge of going under. Denver Post, Examiner, Baltimore Sun, Kansas City Star, Miami Herald, Buffalo News, St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Cleveland Plain Dealer at the bottom. How bad are things? The Cleveland Plain Dealer currently has a full staff of 18. At one time, they employed over 2,000 individuals. Now the Cleveland Plain Dealer is produced by 18 individuals. 23 editorial cartoonists, so I'm an endangered species. Oh, 21 as of this week. There aren't many of us in the United States. I love the hate mail I get. I love this one. I made the mistake of picking up the paper. I'd like to meet you face to face, not hiding behind a pen. I wish you the best should that day occur. I'd like to tell you what a prick you are. It's like, I was really shocked that my wife would use that kind of language, but it's nice to hear from her. I'm a very busy guy. The only way sometimes I can hear from her is when I look at my messages. George Floyd was big for me as an issue, being a supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement. And this cartoon got me in trouble. This was my reaction to it. I, says the African under the knee of the slaver. I can't. Now he's under the knee of the slave owner in the South. I can't. And now here he is in post-Civil War Reconstruction America, still under the knee of the white. And here he is still under Jim Crow. I can't breathe. He's still under the knee of the white man. And here we are in the present moment. I can't breathe. Now, this cartoon was a subject of scorn by the right, who argued that the officer I drew here, let's see. Let's see, I'm going to have to stop the share so I can admit someone to the, there we go. Okay. There we go. This was an example of the mail I got after that cartoon. Let's see, I'll go back a little bit. I'll go forward a little bit. Oh, I'm dizzy from watching Fitzsimmons. There we are, sorry. Wiley, Texas, a suburb of Dallas, was infuriated by this cartoon because middle school teachers use it in a classroom exercise, asking middle schoolers what they thought of it. The National Fraternal of Police argued that this assignment, I was comparing cops to slave owners in the KKK, obviously not recognizing I was drawing a specific officer. Well, they were infuriated. They asked the school board to fire the teachers. The school board not only was asked to fire the teachers by the National Fraternal Order, but Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, who couldn't resist the politics of it. They strung up the three middle school teachers, called them in front of the board, interrogated them, embarrassed them, humiliated it, and the school district apologized. And they'll never run my cartoons ever again because truth is shocking. And I love this piece of mail I got over it from Texas. Educate yourself, you Bolshevik dumbass. Well said. I like the bottom one. You seem a little butthurt. I can't spew my leftist idiocy. You have a willing audience in the legions of Antifa and BLM. It's the kind of mail I get. People wonder why I have the view I do about my conservative friends. It's because this is what I hear from them. The National Coalition Against Censorship got involved when a number of papers and districts around the country got a flurry of negative reaction to my cartoons. I enjoyed that support. I drew this cartoon the following day. Not every Trump supporter is a racist. Absolutely true. Absolutely. But it seems to me every racist is a Trump supporter. I wonder why. I feel strongly about this because of the issue of proximity. Proximity means you experience someone nearby and you learn from them. For example, my dear late gay older brother, who to me was a war hero, a closeted man much of his life. So I'm very sympathetic to the issue of gay rights. And I'm very sympathetic to these issues because of, this is an example of hate mail I got. I hope my newspaper dies. Great. Because why do I never stop crying and whining about this issue? Well, because my son-in-law and my daughter have a beautiful family. It's a mixed marriage, and they live here in beautiful Arizona. And in the past 2 years of the Trump presidency, they've given me a count of 6 different occasions when they were publicly harassed by young white racists and insulted, and they had to simply walk away and just send them some love waves and ignore them. 6 different occasions in front of my grandchildren. If I saw those individuals, I would delightfully ask them to go straight to hell. We're good. The virus only shows up where the population is dense. What is it about this nation, a modern, technologically advanced democracy, that we were so flummoxed by disease? It's because we decided to renounce science, and return to the dark ages for a brief period of time. Wash your hands often, America. Every hour of every day I wash my hands of responsibility. So did our governor. Failure to act soon enough. Would you like one scoop or two of COVID? Stone cold negligence. Is no one willing to take the necessary steps to cause human-caused climate change? Anyone? Anyone? Well, pandemic, I'd be happy to step in. Oh man, I got three kids aged 35 through teen years, and I feel for them. The torch has been passed, and here it is. Good luck, kids. What an inheritance from our irresponsible generation. But I try to be encouraging and positive. I'm glad to live here in Southern Arizona, where I believe it's the smarter end of the bell curve in this state. We are Tucson, and I think we got this. We're doing good. Piece of mail. I blasphemed. Ooh, I love being accused of blasphemy. I blaspheme when I do this cartoon, drawing Dr. Fauci as my shepherd. I shall not want quackery. He reassureth my soul, leading us in the paths of scientific reason. We shall not dwell in this house forever. Amen. Thank you, Dr. Fauci. And I hope he's right. In the late spring, well, it looks like more like summer, right? That'll be the greeting, an actual handshake. That'll be sweet. Munich, very quickly, story of censorship. A couple of years ago, went to Munich because I wanted to make a pilgrimage to a spot. This hall in the University of Munich, where a young student, Sophie Scholl, age 21, distributed pamphlets she had written critical of Hitler and the Nazis in 1944. She was arrested for distributing this ink on paper, just mere ideas. And she was tried before a national tribunal. And at age 21, she was found guilty at 5 o'clock that day, taken downstairs, and in the basement, she was guillotined. Her head was separated from her body, simply for essays, ink on paper, criticizing the German Republic. Words matter. I was so troubled when the President of the United States began saying that the press was the enemy of the people. Because having read William Shirer and a number of scholars of Germany, I was familiar with that phrase, that the press is the enemy of the people. Sophie Scholl's essays were bronzed and laying in the cobblestone outside the University of Munich, where they will endure the ages. There's no Nazi symbolism visible anywhere in Munich. However, you can see her essays, which will stand the test of the ages. Her essays were so strong, so beloved, they were smuggled out to the Allies, who airdropped them by the millions on the German people. I was very touched to see this bust of Sophie Scholl in the hall where she was arrested. And on the bust was a fresh white rose, emblematic of her resistance group, the White Rose Society. Many of us felt, who were critical of Donald Trump, that we were among a group of resistors. Fear no idea. That is one of my guiding principles. I struggle to be a First Amendment purist, even in light of the sins of technology. Join or die. My hero, Ben Franklin. I love any cartoonist who risked it all. If Ben had been arrested, which there was a warrant for his arrest during the revolution, he was to be drawn and quartered for drawing this cartoon, an act of treason against the crown. What a great honor. The kid from Phoenix was equally annoying and irritating. Young Bill Malden, GI, was a member of the infantry. He drew for Stars and Stripes. He won the Pulitzer Prize for his cartoons, which often depicted his fellow soldiers truthfully and honestly. His editor did not think these cartoons were good for morale, in spite of the fact that the fighting men loved them. His editor, General Patton, insulted him, telling him, "Do you think your cartoons would be welcome in the Russian army or the German army?" Of course they wouldn't. That was the point of those great American cartoons. We are a gleefully self-critical, courageous people. Why? Because we have enormous faith in ourselves. That's why we can laugh at ourselves. Social structures like the Nazi or old Soviet structures have little faith in their people. That's why they're not permitted the freedom of free expression. We have enormous faith in our people. Bill Malden drew this cartoon, which is one of my favorites. You might recognize this, maybe when you were kids, when Kennedy was assassinated. Beautiful cartoon. You can't kill a good idea. It's right there in the Constitution of the United States of America. Some people just don't get it. The government of China doesn't get it. China thought you could kill a good idea. In June of '89, Tiananmen Square, all these students gathered. What did they want? Democracy. In the background of this image, you see a white figure. It looks like the Statue of Liberty. They called her the goddess of democracy, and she's staring down Mao Zedong. These people wanted freedom. They were massacred. Their government believed that you can kill a good idea. You can kill the longing for a democratic republic. And here is the result. This man, to me, in the lower left-hand corner, represents that soul of human dignity, that hunger for democratic dignity. No matter how many tanks you roll towards a good idea, I believe, and the revolutionaries believed it in 1776, you can't kill a good idea. That's why it was the first notion codified in our Constitution. Iran, Tehran. I followed this using an app called Periscope. I have a friend she would go back and forth between Tehran, and she was in Tehran at the time. The government believed you could use force to crush the hunger to have a genuinely democratic republic. They'll never crush it. This was my cartoon in responding to the violence against the people of Tehran. The ideals of liberty live on. I'm proud to say this cartoon is used by my friend Nita Farhani in her TED Talks now, and she talks about oppression in that corner of the world. You can't kill a good idea. Khashoggi, you recognize him. What a happy, pleasant man, a good writer. Well, he was dismissed to paradise using bone saws. You're right, journalists are the enemy of the people. Our president provided comfort to dictators who wanted to crush and murder their journalists. His words offered cover. Words matter. Here's another example. Ali Farazat. Look at this great guy. Wonderful cartoonist. Had the privilege of meeting him. A Syrian, courageous critic of his own government. Here he is criticizing nationalists who use the flag to cover up their corruption. His hands were crushed by thugs, goons sent by Syria's Assad. Within a week in that hospital, he drew a portrait sending out this image of great defiance. School kids love this image. They laugh and they chortle and they chuckle. But I point out that this is an image of defiance. And behind that image is the longing for democratic values. Mexico City. I was down there to have a gallery showing of my work in the Museum of Memory and Tolerance about border issues. This is a angel's wings made out of semi-automatic weapons. And I was also down there for a gathering of cartoonists, many of whom were troublemakers, particularly these two fellows, my two friends who call themselves Jack Muslims, referring to Jack Mormons here in Arizona, meaning individuals who are not devout or pious. These guys are a pair of brothers in Damascus who were both very critical of their government and have both been in jail a number of times. My heroes. I attended a global cartooning forum in Paris to talk about the state of journalism and such. And the consensus was that not only were democracies troubled, but in papers around the world were shrinking and dying in great numbers, and cartoonists were being arrested in great numbers. Here I am. Security was high in Paris because Charlie Hebdo attack had been not that long ago, 2015. That is the blood of a cartoonist on the floor, where 12 were killed and 11 injured, among them 9 cartoonists and writers, killed by terrorists who did what? Feared ideas. Societies that fear ideas generally don't produce much in the way of patents. I think there's a relationship between creativity and freedom. The forum in Paris, as I said, we came to the conclusion that we weren't doing that well as an industry or as a group. It was an interesting mix. This fellow was an Australian Frenchman or a French Australian, I'm not sure. A brave fellow from Iran, critical of his government, functioning under an anonymous pseudonym. A refugee from Nigeria who worked in Great Britain. An Indian professor who drew very courageous cartoons critical of his authoritarian government. And I include this fellow because he had come from Turkey to show us his cartoons and learned at the conference he was prohibited from ever returning because his cartoons were critical of Turkey, an ally of the United States, no doubt encouraged by a president of a democracy who declared that the press is the enemy of the people. He's doing okay, so I hear, in Paris as a refugee. I went to a small town for another conference in Paris, south of Paris, town called Saint-Eus, and it was a gathering of 300 cartoonists, and we were sort of like zoo animals put on display so thousands could come from all over Europe to see us, talk with us, and be sketched and drawn and watch us consume the product of Saint-Eus Le Martel starting every day at 11 a.m. And I learned why the French are relatively cheerful. Oh man, that was fun. I met my host, and I include this very quickly to tell you about my host. He wanted to tell me that for the first time in his life, he visited Normandy just 2 weeks before our conference. And he wanted to thank me as an American for the contribution of the Yanks in liberating France from the fascists. And with kindness and irony, I pointed out that indeed a Captain Fitzsimmons had perished when one of the boats dropped its drawbridge, and he was gunned down by Nazi gunfire. And I thanked him for the French contributions to our country, the heroic efforts of Lafayette, without whom I don't think we could have won our revolution. I thanked him for the beautiful Statue of Liberty and the ideals of liberty, but I thanked him for what I thought was the greatest contribution of all that the French had ever made. Brigitte Bardot! Ooh la la la! What a woman, ah! I have to say, while I was in this small village, we were visiting a neighbor of our hosts, a Frenchman, of course, and in his garage, he had his wonderful French car, and on the wall, sure enough, there was an old image of Brigitte Bardot pinned to the wall. It was a beautiful moment. Here we are enjoying ourselves, drawing each other. Cartoonists, that's what we do. We were just born to doodle. That's a French intellectual. Don't they all look like that? That is the face of a French intellectual. Good grief. I love this guy. I want to include him. This is Olivier, my good friend, a Frenchman. He learned to speak English by watching Monty Python and BBC. So he had a very crisp accent, somewhat like John Cleese. 3 heroes, this and my beautiful wife, Gaza, Iran, and here's again my friend Imad. And I'm including him because Imad, next to my bride, is very important. These 3 guys, very critical of their own world, very brave. The cartoonist at this conference, who is judged to be the finest in the world, his prize would be a cow. I did not win the cow. Another cartoonist, whose name Chapat, won the cow that year. The cow's been an interesting feature of this global competition. One year, the winner in 1994 accepted the cow and took it with him and took it up to the Eiffel Tower for a prize for a photograph. Okay, cartoonists. We're a wild bunch. When Doug Marlette died, a wonderful cartoonist, I was told by an acquaintance of mine, Mike Peters, his funeral was very moving. As his casket was lowered into the ground, his 3 closest friends, his son Andy Marlette, Mike Peters, and Mike Lukovich, bent over and gave him a full moon salute, as he wanted and as they had discussed before the funeral. Don't you have an editor, for God's sake? Newsflash, that's not birdseed. Well, yes, I do. And I'm pretty lucky. She gives me a remarkable reign of freedom for my tasteless adolescent humor. 50 Shades of Grey. Hey, it's a hair salon in Sun City. I like that one. That was cute. This cartoon was very popular, and it still sums up how I feel. I'm not coming out until there's a vaccine. News a couple of weeks ago came out that stunned me. You used to remember the images of my friend Imad Hajjaj. He was arrested, and he faced a 5-year prison sentence for the cybercrime of insulting an Arab country. For years, I had been a member of the Cartoonist Society and profoundly concerned about cartoonists arrested for just simply making marks on paper. But when it came to having an actual friend that I knew personally, whose wife I knew and whom I'd Zoom from time to time. It was so interesting to Zoom, have conversations with Imad. He would show me outside of his home, and he was middle class. Pardon me, he didn't live in Syria. He lived in Jordan. Anyway, he was middle class, living in Amman, Jordan. And he'd show me outside his home, and the streets, it looked just like Green Valley or Sun City. Really beautiful, kind of adobe looking homes, nice cars in front of them. Only instead of Christmas decorations, they were decorations for Ramadan, which were crescent moons with stars, which Imad complained about. So they were kitschy. And of course, I met his teenage son, who was playing video games the entire time. So I was close to Imad. Here he is being arrested. This photograph was sent to me by his brother. So as soon as I heard the news, I remembered, oh, the press is the enemy of the people. Our president aided and abetted the mullahs, or whoever they were, in Amman, who thought he should be arrested for his cartoons. So I launched a campaign. Here's Imad with his wife at the cartoonist conference. We were having a great time. So I spread this on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Before you know it, other cartoonists took up the fight, and it became an international cause. International censorship groups joined in. The United States government, I'm ashamed to say, said nothing. And thanks to the pressure, within 2 weeks, he was freed. He was freed, and he was facing a lesser sentence of 2 years in prison, and he was retried, and he was freed a second time. And I was so happy to get this note from him. I appreciate your support. What I have missed during my stay in the prison. I wanted to thank you, my dearest friend, for everything. So things are not that great for the free press around the world, in spite of the former president being gone from the scene. There are still authoritarians around the globe doing ill. The two lessons I want to leave you with before I happily take questions: please fear no idea, and remember that words do matter. My favorite words are of this great man, Mark Twain. And gosh, God bless Hal Holbrook. The words of Mark Twain: sacred cows make the best hamburger. I like to believe that I have no sacred cows. And that's me, Dave Fitzsimmons. And hopefully I can quit this and stop the share. And I am back. And thank you very much for struggling to stay awake during that painful PowerPoint. But I just thought that would give you an idea of what I do, what I draw, and tell you a little bit about the past year. So I would be more than delighted to take questions. If you have questions, I don't know if Les, if you want to monitor this, or if folks want to simply raise their hands, or how you want to do this.
I think of raising a hand or something like that. From Peggy to everyone. I'm reading the comments. Wonderful presentation. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm grateful for that kindness. I'm very lucky here in Southern Arizona to get really
and we got
supportive.
a terrific thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for that. You're very kind. Hey, I'm looking forward to getting my vaccine. I bet everybody else is. Whoa. Or I hope you've gotten yours.
Yes.
Yeah, my wife got hers. She's been shameless bragging about it.
Well, I'm older than you are.
Yeah, you punk.
Okay, anyone out there have a question? I had some technical difficulties here, but I don't think anybody except me noticed it.
Looks
I had
like
one computer freeze, so I got my laptop and a comment from, are there young people doing political cartoons?
That's a very good question, and yes, there are. And I'm just a kid, right? I'm only 66, but I get this sense that I do feel this technological gulf. There are young cartoonists. They really aren't working for newspapers anymore. They're working for digital platforms, digital sites around the country and around the world. I'm pleased that the Washington Post, when Tom Towles retired, simply bumped up the wonderfully talented Ann Telnays to be their editorial cartoonist. So that was striking to me that they decided to fill the spot. A lot of newspapers do not fill the spot. It's unfortunate for young cartoonists because I know a number of really talented young cartoonists who just cannot find an opportunity to publish their work. And I think that's also in part because satire has morphed into the form of the internet meme, away from the form of the old style political cartoons. Good question.
Calvin raised his hand, and I'm going to go to Joe Jackson, who is a retired newspaper person. Calvin.
Yeah, David, the Republican Party in Arizona recently censured Jeff Flake and Cindy McCain. Would you comment on that?
I would happily comment on that. Let me start by saying, being a pseudo-journalist, a cartoonist, when I meet individuals, political figures, I make an effort to appear objective. When I met John McCain, wow, 30 years ago, I could not hide my admiration for John McCain. Being a military kid from a military family, I was aware of John McCain's heroic behavior. In spite of our differences, I admired him and respected him because he had a remarkable sense of humor about himself. And I felt that when I engaged him in conversations of difference, he was a reflective listener. I thought he was a remarkable individual. And I think, you know, when he fell for Sarah Palin, he was just trying to survive his own party because he was constantly hammered by the far right in his party for not being far right enough. So come along Donald Trump, who insults his service as a prisoner of war, which I thought was despicable and disgraceful and sufficient for Donald Trump to be forgotten by history. And so there is what I call a McCain wing of the Republican Party, what we would call the gentleman Republicans, the thinking Republicans, the Jeff Flakes, the Cindy McCains, maybe the Meghan McCains, the Romneys, the John Kasichs, the Michael Steeles, some of the folks who went to the Lincoln Project. And then you have the batshit crazy wingnut half of the party. Given to conspiracy theories, no government is ever good under any circumstances. And so you have that tension between the two. I can see why Cindy McCain, a remarkable woman in good humor, simply laughed off being censured by the current Arizona Republican Party, which is so far to the right, it's actually in New Mexico. That's how far they're right. It actually is. So I agree. I was impressed by her note that, yeah, it's a badge of honor. And I think individuals like her, Jeff Flake, could recover and rescue and redirect the party to be the positive force it was in our democracy before it veered so far to the right. Among that group who was censored was Ducey. I hope he does not have a future. I found that during COVID, he was duplicitous and shameless. But I'm rambling. Thank you for that good question, Calvin.
Thank you.
Joe, did you have a question?
Oh, I did, but I hadn't even raised my hand. Maybe you just knew that I would, being a fan of David's, want to ask him. David, when you had the previous president, you had it easy to draw the creep, but if you were if you were picking somebody to do a character of, it doesn't seem like Joe Biden is easy to work with. He's just too normal looking. So I've seen some of your cartoons of him, and particularly the ones with the sunglasses are just, you know, fantastic. We know who he is immediately, but what is it that comes to your mind? I wish we were back at the forum where you could draw. But if you were to draw, if you were going to do something with Biden for tomorrow, what are the things that come to your mind? What is it that you're what is it that you're exaggerating about the man's face or anything about him?
Thank you for that question, because I'm inspired to draw Joe Biden now and to talk about it. Talk about the image, because you're absolutely right. Not an easy man to draw, he said, as he fetches his favorite markers and a piece of paper. Let's see, I'll move this over here so it's visible. There we go. Well, Joe Biden is challenging, as was Barack Obama at first, and Mitt Romney as well, because they're handsome men. It's easy to draw an Ernest Borgnine face. It's not so easy to draw a handsome man. But the first thing I noticed about Biden, and my wife pointed this out, making fun of my Irish heritage about high foreheads. He has this wonderful high forehead. And then his hair kind of comes up and out in a white cowlick off the top. It's straight down the back. Pretty straight down here. Huge, pretty big ear. Pretty big ear. Nice bright cheeks. Bright cheeks. I gotta say, I really enjoyed it when Biden was, well, I couldn't say enjoy it, but I was impressed when he was saying goodbye to Delaware at the armory named for his son. And tears are streaming down his face, but he quoted Irish poets, and he talked about Irish poets are the greatest. So he's got my vote just for that right there. He's got this nice jawline, chin, boom, great white eyebrows, little tiny beady eyes. Little tiny beady Joe eyes right there. Kind of hard to see. There you go. But what really brings it home is he's got this great kind of sideways smile that's right off his face, and his hair. It's a little long and shaggy in the back. Tall, dignified fellow. Boom, boom. And I like to draw the features I see in my own face as I've aged. I'm getting those little spots right there. Freckles. There we go. Maybe an extra wrinkle or two. And that's there's Joe Biden, which is he's fun to draw. But of course, in the next 3 years, I'm only going to draw him for this particular side, this 3/4 view, because I still haven't figured out to draw him straight on so it looks like him, unless I use those aviator glasses.
Okay, and so what are when would you likely use the aviator glasses?
Oh, maybe when he's outside. But you know, I've noticed since his election, he hasn't worn them quite as much. And I'm aware he loves aviators, but I'm not sure that the masses or the public knows that he loves aviators. But I will probably use the aviators in cartoons that praise him if he does something heroic, which I'm feeling more inclined to do now that I'm a much older cartoonist. Where in the past I was utterly, completely critical of every political figure. These days I feel like being a booster for some, because I find the threats from the right, the far extreme right, terrifying. Not to bring the conversation down, but who knows how many Tim McVeighs are out there right now. I had the pleasure of working in Oklahoma City for a couple of years near the Murrah building. And so when that blew, it felt personal. I'd walk past that building and saw decent people going to work every day, knew there was a daycare center in there. And even though that was in 1995, you had an extremist who believed conspiracy theories, who was a war veteran himself. And he was inspired by a conspiracy theory, and the explosives were easy to come by, and makes me think curiously about the present moment. Good luck, America.
Okay, I've got a couple other.
Yes.
We've got a question from Peggy who says, are you ever concerned about your own safety? Gotten serious threats? Is there anything too toxic or controversial to draw about?
I have gotten threats, and I generally would share them with the sheriff's department or TPD. But a friend of mine who's had his expertise in this said, generally, if they're going to kill you, they aren't going to bother to even write you a letter. They're just going to kill you. The ones that were disturbing are the letters that are spelled with precision, like, oh, this looks like an engineer or an architect's handwriting. But, the word kill is misspelled, 3 L's. Threats, generally, if I get something that is unnerving, I will publish it on Facebook so everyone in the world knows. For example, a week ago, I got a threatening mail from a fellow who was a Proud Boy here in Tucson. So I outed him. I published his letter online for everyone to see, my response to it, and noted that he is a member of the Proud Boy.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm a nasty, horrible little man. I will do terrible things to people who threaten me.
Now, Mary had her hand up. Are you still online, Mary? If so, unmute and ask your question. May not have it.
Huh.
All right, it's getting close to 10 o'clock, so I'll take one more question out there if there is one. I had to move to a laptop to manage this, so I'm not being able to see everyone as well. If anybody has a question, go to the chat option. It would be the best option for you. And we'll wait and see. We had 51 connections today. So we think there's 1.5 times 51. We get 70 some connections, which is really, really good.
Wow, that is terrific.
Les?
Hmm?
Les?
Go ahead.
All
Go
right.
ahead.
Are there topics, if not the administration at this point, are there topics that are coming up that intrigue you and will be subject of a lot of your cartoons as you, political topics, issues we're facing in government?
Yeah, that's a good question. 2 issues concern me, and they're related. And I'm sorry to focus on it, but of course, it's the domestic terrorism that has infected our country. I don't know about you, but I am just astonished at the number of people who believe the QAnon nonsense. Concomitant with that, not only will I be following QAnon until it hopefully perishes, but the second issue is technology and the digital platforms that played a significant role in disseminating and promoting these lies, these bizarre conspiracy theories, which people find online and they become radicalized online. It's a complicated issue. And to digress here very quickly, burrow within it, if my newspaper publishes a letter to the editor that says you should go to Les's house and paint it purple, and people do that, Les can sue the newspaper. If a digital platform publishes a letter that says you should go to Les's house and paint it purple, no penalty is paid by Facebook or Instagram or even Twitter. They're pretty much left to be self-censoring and self-regulating. It wouldn't trouble me at all if these digital creatures were subject to the same legal consequences as print is. But those 2 issues really concern me because they affect the future success of democracy, the future success of our democratic republic, which, if anything, the past 4 years demonstrated how fragile it is and how it is up to each and every one of us as citizens to do our patriotic duty and to combat untruths.
All right, we reached 10 o'clock. Thank you very much again for joining us. Our Forum Club does appreciate. You'll see, I see some clapping of hands out there, but they're all muted, so you don't get to hear it. We'd like to put you on for next year, the first Wednesday in February, and I'll get a hold of you before then several times, of course. But you're willing to do it?
Absolutely. And I Next year will be cheerful and upbeat.
Right, and we'll be in a same room.
We'll be in, that's right.
Thank you, David.
Oh, my pleasure indeed. You all
Thank
take
you.
care. Stay safe, healthy, and strong.
Okay, the next presentation invitation will go out on Sunday. They go out every Sunday. If you don't get it by Sunday afternoon, send an email to me. All right, thank you all.